This is Command Post, a series of discussions about military matters from Time and the Center for a New American Security.
Kristen, you've put together a pretty fascinating two-volume study on cyber defense, and you talk about the importance in it of properly calibrating this threat, not to overhype it, but also not to underestimate it. That's obviously, you know, walking a balance beam across Niagara Falls. How do we strike the right balance here?
Well, you're right. It's a balance beam, and it's a very tough one to walk. And actually, nobody knows the right answer because there's so much uncertainty. Therein lies the problem. What we can do, though, is avoid the two extremes. One, clearly not doing enough. There is some broad consensus on the parts of our systems and our networks that are weak and vulnerable. There's also clearly a place where we will be overspending, where we will be spending a tremendous amount for a very poor return on investment. And I think we need to avoid that because of the fear and these overinflated threats. How we actually navigate that in the exact sweet spot is a question I leave to Jim Lewis.
But before we get to Jim, you actually say that you're sort of leery of the term cyber war. Your sense is more that it's something less than that, or it needs to be dealt with in a different way than what we think of as war?
I'm not sure that I've said that exactly. What I have said is that I think we need to be conscious of not imagining that what happens in cyberspace stays in cyberspace and that there will be large-scale wars fought only on the terrain of cyberspace. Instead, cyber wars are likely to be or cyber conflict is likely to be integral to any future conflict the United States faces. And imagining it as some separate entity is only a way of thinking that's going to get us into trouble.
Jim, the issue is, okay, if we're fighting a peer competitor, well, then maybe cyber war will come into play. But lately, correct me if I'm wrong, most of our foes and conflicts have been terrorist groups or nations that really are second or third world. So is cyber warfare, is it proper to think of cyber warfare as being in the realm of a real serious and big war, and all of these, not to put too fine an edge on it, rinky-dink skirmishes, it won't really involve that kind of thing? Or is that something likely to change in the coming decade?
Well, you've got a couple things going on. It's true that right now it's only the big militaries that have the capability, right? And that may not change for a while. But you do see people using this stuff, and if you remember the case of the insurgent in Iraq who was able to hack into UAV downloads, that's pretty cool, right? $29.99, I think, was the cost of the software. So we do see people using this, and what I worry about is a race between our capabilities to defend and other people's capabilities to attack, because the rate of change is uneven, and attacking is easier than defending, particularly when you're tied into knots politically.
Well, the Pentagon has made it clear that their newly rolled out cyber strategy is largely defensive in nature. Is the U.S. government, the U.S. military forward-leaning enough in the offensive realm? You know, nip a problem in the bud as opposed to building huge walls or whatever, you know, when they do attack. Should we be more offensively cast in the cyber realm?
I think we need to be careful that we don't provoke more threats than we defend against. And I think you clearly saw the Pentagon trying to be concerned about exactly that in this recent strategy. Of course they're focused on offense. We have a new cyber command. There's a major interest in developing offensive cyber capabilities. But I think there is rightfully a concern that overly focusing on offensive capability will only lead others to see that as aggression and to react to that in a way that ultimately leaves us less secure, not more secure.
Remember, to foreigners, we are the Borg, a technologically superior race whose motto is prepare to be assimilated. So when they look at Cyber Command, they're afraid. They're afraid of the U.S. And we did a survey a couple years ago that found the country most feared in cyberspace was the United States. Now, a lot of that had to do with the administration at the time, but when you think about offensive capabilities, we are seen generally as the leader. The dilemma is that having a strong cyber offense works really well against some things. The Chinese aren't going to dare to attack us, right? Nor the Russians or anybody else. It doesn't work so well against other problems like spying or crime, which are usually not considered, you know, justifications for the use of force in response. So we can have a really great offensive capability, and we do, but it doesn't work against our biggest problems. And that's one of the tensions in this whole debate.